Parliament investigation Anas be one famra. Parliament Anas bring the investigation.
Na no cross obey.
All no say so about investigation. Anything no kata so. Is Parliament more than judiciary? Anything no show judiciary now show Parliament.
Another arm of government.
Sure. I don't know more yet new massa. Eye okoto ne budwe. Nyanya nchre de wonko. I will fight for justice for every person in this country. And what all I'm doing is that justice for all, not justice in the interest of the strongest. We are not in a Plato's ideal world. Why a sikafo and kwana justice? No.
So let me say we're back court. I only made fireman, cashman. I be in court. I be a tantana with him. And then you get the guy will remove everything for everybody to see who announces. And yes, there's a court to make. But you know, I'm interpretations are gone and need back up her. Only the two cover the face. Me say me the force be here didn't want him. I'm here to so a mama announce kwan. So on shamas that day they'll jail me. I'll beat the shit out of the guy and take that thing out.
On 31st May 2018, Hafiz Abdallah popped up on Oman FM and Netu TV to allege that Ace investigative journalist Anas Arimia Anas demanded and took $50,000 from him to help him out of a case he was investigating. He alleged that this was after Anas had come with the police to arrest him in his house in the dead of the night.
He asked you to pay 50,000 to quash the story.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So why didn't you show those videos? Because you showed the custom officers, you showed the judges, and when it came to our time, because he took the 50,000, he didn't show it. You understand where I'm coming from? So
right.
All I'm trying to say to Ghanaians is that this guy is not correct. He's not a correct human being. Because he comes to do this thing, goes to edit what he wants, add and minus what he wants, like any movie producer would do. You understand that?
Okay.
And that is exactly what he's doing. It's a movie that he's producing.
So how would you clear your name and gain your reputation back?
It's up to him to come and tell the truth.
Okay.
For he's not as the angel they want him to be. He's not an angel. He's the most corrupt guy. And I challenge him to come and say he hasn't gone. He didn't take my money.
Good evening. Welcome to another edition of Good Evening Ghana. As always, such an amazing pleasure to join you. Tonight, we have a lot to talk about. Lawyer Bafo is already in the studio. But we're going to set out the basis of our conversation. We have two pieces of conversation tonight. Usually we have four, maybe three. There's a book in front of me that I brought to give to my sports reporter. It's entitled The Premier League, A History in 10 Matches. I've not actually looked at it. But I saw it in my library today when I was looking for this book. I was looking for this very small book in my library today. I couldn't find it. Then I chanced on this one. And I asked my guy, when did I bring this book? He said, I brought it some time back. I've just read the introduction. It's a fantastic book. And if you're a sports journalist, sports reporter, or you're interested in sports, if you're a great sports journalist and you want to be greater, you should read it. If you are starting as a sports journalist and you want to become very great, you should read it. It's entitled The Premier League, A History in 10 Matches. It's written by Jim White and it's entitled Celebrating 21 Years of the Premier League. And it tells the whole story about how the British people decided to set up a league that would be the best in the world. They announced to the whole world in 1990-something that they were going to set up a committee. Then they announced the committee. It included some important, but I believe it included Jim White, who wrote the book. And they said they were going to set up a Premier League that would be the best in the world in 10 years. In 7 years, they did it. And since then, 20-something years on, the Premier League has been ruling. This is the philosophy that underpinned that work. So if you're a sports journalist, you want to be great, you should read it. It's entitled The Premier League, A History in 10 Matches by Jim White. Okay, now let's get to the other matters. Tonight, I have a break of 6 minutes that I need to take because we have so much to share and it's going to be explosive tonight. Let me just get on the touch screen and show you how it's going to look like. Yes, so this is Anas Arimia Anas. This is Kennedy Agyapong. A lot has happened among these two men as we know it over the past so many months, maybe years. But what happened last week in the Supreme Court is interesting. Anas had sued Kennedy Agyapong in defamation at the High Court. Kennedy Japan, in responding to the suit, pleaded what the lawyers call justification. In pleading justification, he supplied some materials to establish his justification. After the ruling of the court case, Anas was unhappy with the ruling, so he decided to take out a writ of certiorari, as they say, at the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court has just finished the ruling on certiorari last week. It's been on social media somewhat. Tonight, we're going to get into the details of the matter and see why the one who won, and see why 3 judges said something and 2 judges said the opposite. The 2 judges were led by Justice Yoni Kulendi, who, of course, everyone knows, one of my favorite people. And then the 3 justices were led by the Lord Chief Justice, Justice Tokon, who has gained significant respect, even much more than she used to have since she became the Lord Chief Justice. It looks like she's really on top of her job and she's running the show. The way that some of the skeptics who were wondering about her role as CJ, most of them have now been converted. I've spent this afternoon talking to a lot of judges, a lot of lawyers about the role of Justice Tokonu at the Superior Court of Judicature. The result is that she's doing very well. After the break, we are getting into the details of this matter. We'll begin by just setting out the history for you to see. And later, Lawyer Balfour will join us on the seat and on the touchscreen to explain to us some more details. Also, coming up later tonight, the Attorney General, Godfrey Adame, has written a letter to the President. The contents of the letter to the President is indicative that there's been a Supreme Court action against the about the LGBT bill. You know that Parliament has unanimously passed the bill, and the bill is now headed to the presidency for its presidential assent. In between time, legal action has been taken. We'll get the details of what the legal action is. What did Godfrey Adame write to the president? And what is happening between the presidency and Parliament? Some MPs have expressed their views on the letter. President John Dramani Mahama has expressed his views on a letter that purportedly originated from the president's office to the speaker. Our concern tonight is the Attorney General's letter. What did he write to the president? We'll be looking at that. But first, let's take a break so that when we come back, everything is out of the way. We hit the highway and we go. This is Good Evening Ghana. It's live. Welcome to the show. But if it's okay, we can now go without fear or favor to do what we got to do, isn't it? Good evening again, viewers, and it's always a pleasure to welcome you to Good Evening Ghana. Now, we are going to tonight discuss the legal matter, but we've been doing some research, so we just want to give you the reason why we are doing this history, which will take us 5 minutes. Please check my time. I just need to do this in 5 minutes. Or maybe 7, I beg you, 7. 7 is better. When I say 5 minutes, they're always laughing at me that I'll say 5 minutes, I'll do it in 25 minutes. So I know that they've been gossiping like that. So anyway, let's get on with it. So we are looking at a major constitutional case tonight. And we will do some of it in Twi. I've prepared my Twi, and I'm going to explain some of the matters in Twi tonight. But here we are. We are just giving you a background of the constitutional cases, some of them, we've selected some of them, that have been going around in our country's history, so that you get a context when we say that this Anas and Kennedy Japan case is a major constitutional matter, and it falls into the Hall of Fame of our constitutional cases. Of course, to begin, the first most important constitutional case in the history of Ghana is this one, the Akoto trial, and I have these people here. What was the Akoto trial about? The Akoto trial was about a law that Parliament had passed. It's called the Preventive Detention Act. In those days, there was a bit of insecurity in the country, so people were throwing bombs, opposition and government were throwing bombs against Nkrumah and all of that. The security of Nkrumah became important, and so it was decided that a law be passed that they called the Preventive Detention Act. It is to say that you are being detained to prevent you from doing what we think you want to do. That's PDA. It was a law passed by Parliament that an individual, Mr. Paul Adomochiri, is being detained to prevent him from doing what we think he's going to do. How do we know what we think he's going to do? We see that Mr. Paul Adomochiri has gone to visit Mr. Abu Jinapor 7 times. Mr. Abu Jinapor is an opponent of Kwame Nkrumah's government, and Mr. Paul Adomochiri is a journalist who has been speaking against socialism. So we see that he and Abu Jinapor have been having meetings at Aliza Hotel. It suggests that the two of them are planning and preparing to hurt Nkrumah or to overthrow the state or to do something. So the two of them will be taken to detention. That's PDA. Okay. Now, the former Greek minister, what's his name? Osei Akoto, Dr. Osei Akoto, his father, Bafo Osei Akoto, who was a Asante-Guinean linguist, had evinced his opposition to Nkrumah in many, many ways. He had conducted a by-election in Achumangwa, Bieja, in 1954, in which he had defeated the CPP candidate that was presented by Nkrumah. The by-election occurred because the CPP candidate had died unfortunately passed in a car crash. And there was a guy called B.F. Kusi, who used to be a CPP person from Ashanti. Bafo Akoto convinced B.F. Kusi to stand on the ticket of, at that time, it wasn't UP, it was GNPC, some party like that, Buzier's party. And the B.F. Kusi had been elected in a watershed election that indicated that the CPP strength in Ashanti was dwindling, as it were. So Akoto became a known opponent of the Nkrumah regime, and he was quite powerful because he was a linguist. Now, Akoto was arrested on Preventive Detention Act. It was suggested that Akoto was preparing to do something against the Nkrumah government. It wasn't far-fetched, was it? Because Akoto was a known opponent of Nkrumah. Akoto's lawyer was Dankwa, J.B. Dankwa. And in the case of Akoto, these were the judges. Seaku Kosa, the learned Chief Justice, Mr. Justice Van Leer, Justice of the Supreme Court, and Mr. Justice Akiomi, another Justice of the Supreme Court. Now, all these men were great friends, as it were. There are photographs of Dankwa and Kosa talking about great things. Dankwa has written articles about Kosa, eulogizing Kosa, the first Chief Justice of Ghana. So they were great friends. But this is the argument that went before the Supreme Court. Dankwa strenuously argued that the Preventive Detention Act was against human rights. How can a human rights regime have somebody to be detained based on what he's thinking? Because naturally in law, what constitutes a crime is what you are thinking plus what you have done. As the lawyers say, the actus reus and the mens rea. The mens rea first, the mind, then the actus reus, which is what you are doing. These are Latin phrases. We'll be using some few Latin phrases this evening, but it will be explained, even in Akan. So the Dankwa's argument was that you cannot catch somebody that he's thinking of something. He must have done it. So he went to court with an application that the Preventive Detention Act was illegal and that it was against human rights. The justices of the Supreme Court were struggling to find the human rights charter that Dankwa was relying on because the 1960 Constitution did not have a human rights charter. So they were asking Dankwa that, what human rights charter are you relying on? And Dankwa was very clever. He was at peril, as it were, in terms of the resources, the intellectual resources, because the Constitution didn't have a human rights charter. So you know what Dankwa did? He went to the presidential oath in the second schedule of the Constitution. The same oath today is in the 1992 Constitution, where the president said, I pledge to do right to all manner of persons. You hear it all the time. We show it all the time. It says, I, John Ajekum Kufuor, do in the name of Almighty God. So somewhere along the line they say, and I pledge to do right to all manner of persons. He says that, I pledge to do right to all manner of persons. So Dr. Dankwa said, this pledge to do right to all manner of persons means that you treat persons in a certain way. To do right to all manner of persons cannot include to arrest somebody and say that he's thinking of something and therefore you detain him for whatever time. The detention can be 10 years. Nobody cares. No trial, nothing. So that's the point Dankwa made. Then the Supreme Court came to the interesting conclusion that the presidential oath that Dankwa is relying on is not justiciable. It's not law. It's only an intention. And in any case, the way to mark the president on the presidential oath is a political question. It's not a legal question. He said that people are going to listen to the president taking his oath. And they are going to hear him say that he wants to do right to all manner of persons. If he doesn't do right to all manner of persons, they will vote against him in the next election. It's not a question for the Supreme Court to interpret whether the president has done do right to all manner of persons or not. What the law says is that this is an act of parliament that has been passed. Then Dankwa went to the second leg of the argument. He said that the Constitution is what created parliament, and that parliament cannot be better than the Constitution. He used the example, the creator and the creator. The Constitution is the creator of parliament, that's the creator. How then does the creator become more important than the creator? And they said to him, the Attorney General of the day was Mr. Godfrey Bain. We should have added his photograph. Mr. Godfrey Bain was a British Irishman. Godfrey Bain was the Attorney General. And Dankwa told Bin that you are coming from England, where Parliament is supreme. Here in Ghana, we are like the American Constitution. The Constitution is supreme, not Parliament. And then they said to him that, okay, show us in the Constitution where there's a human rights charter. Unfortunately, Dr. Dankwa couldn't find it. And so the court came to the conclusion that the detention of Akoto was correct, legal, and that if the people of Ghana were unhappy with it, in the next election, they will determine what they are happy with and what they are not happy with. They determined that the presidential oath of the president was a political question, wasn't a legal question. It is difficult to say that the decision of the court was wrong. All of us read it as law students and we all come to the conclusion the decision is wrong. But if you look at it well, and please, those of you watching me who know Professor Michael Quay, don't tell him that I came on TV and I said that the decision in Akoto was technically right. He will disown me. I don't want Michael Quay. You see, you can't go to people like Michael Quay and even suggest to them that the decision in Akoto was right. They'll kill you. You can't go to Kofi Kumadodos and tell them that the decision in Akoto was right. But I think the decision in Akoto was technically right. Dr. Dankwa didn't have much to rely on. He demonstrated his very detailed legal industry by finding the presidential oath and all of those things. But it didn't work. So in all other constitutions since then, we have put in a full human rights charter. So that was the first one. That was Akoto. Because of time, I'll jump this one. This was Wayano Foriata. Wayano Foriata is the other case, and it was Wayano Foriata was a chief. So Wayano Foriata was two chiefs. A chief, well, how do I put it? At that time, the chiefs were against Nkrumah, sort of. There was a regional tribunal. It was said that when a chief has done something wrong, the punishment to be meted out to him was to be determined by the regional house of chiefs. Because the government of CPP were not excited about chiefs and regional house of chiefs, they hadn't set up the regional house of chiefs. They then argued that if regional house of chiefs has not been set up, then parliament should make a decision about the punishment that chiefs should get if they fall foul of the law. Mr. Joe Randolph went to court and strenuously argued that it was the government's responsibility to set up regional house of chiefs. And therefore, if regional houses are not set up, it is the government's fault. The government cannot change the goalpost that the chiefs, regional house of chiefs, have not been set up. So therefore, they go to parliament. And that was Wayano Foriata. Let me rush through it. Which other one? Kwachi and Attorney General is a very interesting one. Kwachi and Attorney General is the former IGP, Inspector General of Police. The guy who was Inspector General of Police at the dawn of the coup, Rawlings coup, 1979. You can imagine the guy is IGP. They had shot Achampong and the rest, his colleagues in the military. IGP was taken to some tribunal and it was said that he had been corrupt, something like that. So they wanted to punish him, or they pronounced punishment against him. And then the coup people handed over to the Liman government. And when they did, Kwachi went back to court and said that the cause that convicted him of whatever the AFRC convicted him, that court was a kangaroo court. It was hogwash. It didn't matter. It's a useless court. And the High Court agreed with him. Guess who made that judgment? Justice Kwabena Agyapong. And I'm saying he's Kwabena Agyapong so that you know who I'm talking about. But that's Kwabena Agyapong's father. Justice Kwabena Agyapong is the one who gave the ruling that Kwachi was right. The court that convicted him was a kangaroo court. That's the same court that convicted Achampong. Tonight we'll be showing a bit of Achampong anyway. That convicted Achampong, convicted Akufu, convicted Amedome, convicted Roger Feli, and convicted also Yabuachi and shot them dead at the something we have regretted forever. I think we should hold a national event and demonstrate our regrets for the executions of 1979. It will help heal the nation and it will make us more prosperous. I believe that. But that's not the topic for today. That's Kwachi and Attorney General. It's gone. Sorry. All right. The next one is this one. Tufo and Attorney General. Tufo and Attorney General is also very interesting. Maybe I'll end here because the time is just killing us. Tufo and Attorney General, I have the pictures of these men here and I'll tell you what happened. So in Tufo and Attorney General, Justice Apalu, that's a bit more complicated. It's very legal. Justice Apalu was a Chief Justice during the coup era. You know, we have what we call the Superior Court of Judicature, the High Court, the Court of Appeal, and the Supreme Court. Together, they constitute the Superior Court of Judicature. And the Chief Justice can be picked even from the bar or from one of them. Now, when the coup people come, they take out the Supreme Court. So the court system during revolutions ends at the Court of Appeal. So from High Court to Court of Appeal, that's the end. So the Chief Justice and the senior most judges are members of the Court of Appeal. Chief Justice Apalu was named the Chief Justice in the late 70s. And when the coup came, he was still Chief Justice. And then the Constitution came. So when we go to transition the constitution, sometimes there are transitional provisions that says that all those who were high court judges before the coming into force of this constitution will remain high court judges. All those who were court of appeal judges will remain court of appeal judges. This was the interesting matter. What then happens to the Lord Chief Justice? He's supposed to remain as Chief Justice, isn't it? So the Liman government, who knew that the Chief Justice was a UP person opposite the party, they nominated Justice Apalu to become Chief Justice. He was already Chief Justice. He was renominated by the president. Apalu went before Parliament's Appointments Committee and told Parliament that he didn't have to be there because he's Chief Justice already. He doesn't need to be nominated to be Chief Justice again. However, because the Speaker has invited him, he will show up. So Apalu was there. This was in 1980. Apalu was there, and then the Parliament Appointments Committee heard him. The majority were CPP, PNP people, and they voted against him. The verdict came from the committee that Apalu's nomination had failed. Then Nana Akufo-Addo, Chachu Chikata, together took out a writ to the Supreme Court for a declaration that upon a true and proper interpretation of the transition provisions and the 1979 Constitution, Justice Apalu was Chief Justice and needed not to be nominated by the President to Parliament. And then the court agreed with the young Nana Akufo-Addo and his friend Chachu Chikata. The Attorney General Joe Randolph lost the case on that occasion. So this is a bit of constitutional history as we approach where we are getting to tonight. Okay, a few others we can talk about. 31st December case in the MPP versus the Attorney General, who was Martin Amidu here. In that case, 31st December was a holiday. It was argued that 31st December ought not to be a holiday. Peter Adjete went to court on 28th December and was hoping to get a verdict from the Supreme Court. With him was Nana Akufo-Addo and others. And of course, the court ruled, significant ruling that 31st December cannot be celebrated as a holiday with public funds. So that's 31st December. Is there another one? MPP and GBC, we know the MPP and GBC story again, argued by Peter Adjete and Nana Akufo-Addo. They were very successful at the Supreme Court in those days. They argued successfully before the court that the Ghana Broadcasting Corporation had an obligation, a legal obligation, to give equal attention to all shades of political opinion when it comes to national matters. They established the obligation of the state broadcaster to allow all political parties, shades of opinion, to express their views. It had to do with the presentation of the 1993 budget and the MPP wanting to present their budget on TV and Ghana Broadcasting Corporation saying, no, they cannot present their budget. Guess who was presenting the MPP budget on TV? Mr. Kwame P.N.M. He was the foremost economist of their party, and he was presenting on TV, and GBC transmission was cut off in talking point because Mr. P.N.M. was speaking. Nana Akufo-Addo and Adjete took out a writ, went to the Supreme Court and said this cannot happen. The Supreme Court ruled. Justice Pegam, Ajabin, Redu, and others ruled for Akufo-Addo and Adjete that, in fact, the state broadcaster has an obligation. That is why today they do political party broadcasts. They're going to start very soon. They're going to start political party broadcasting election year. Every political party will be given the space. This is just running us through a bit of constitutional matter. J.H. Mensah, the Attorney General, was also an interesting matter. It was said that ministers who had been appointed in the first term. So let me give you an example. You have the Transport Minister, Kwaku Ofori-Asiamah. He was Transport Minister in 2017. He was nominated by President Akufo-Addo to be Transport Minister. He went to Parliament and was vetted and passed as Transport Minister. Then he was renominated as Transport Minister in 2021. So the idea of this matter was that the NDC were saying that when a person has been Transport Minister, nominated by the same president, the president has won the election, he's Transport Minister again, why must he go for vetting? He should continue as a retained minister, a minister who had been retained. Of course, again, Nana Akufo-Addo took out a writ to the Supreme Court together with Akoto Ampao. May Akoto rest in peace. Akufo-Addo was a member of Parliament, by the way, at that time. And he went to court for J.H. Mensah together with Akoto. And they argued before the court that, in fact, the life of the Parliament ended. So the second Parliament ended, the third Parliament ended. In fact, if you have a bill in Parliament, in the second Parliament, that starts in the second Parliament and doesn't conclude before the end of the Parliament, that bill dies. That's what happened to the right to information. It had been there under Kufuor, it died. Then it came under Mills, it died. Then it came under John Mahama, then it died. Then it came under Akufo-Addo and it was passed. So if a bill lies in Parliament for 4 years without being passed, it dies. So the argument that Akufo-Addo and Akoto made before the court that the life of the Parliament passes. Therefore, any approvals that the Parliament gave to an individual to become a minister had to be renewed by the same process. The Supreme Court held that, yes, they could do that. I have more to say about the case, but we can talk about it later. So that was J.H. Mensah, Attorney General. Of course, Obeda Samoa and Martin Amidu were there. I was looking for the photograph of DF and others, but I'm sure it's too late for them to get it. Do they have it? Oh, I think they have it. Oh, fantastic. Okay. Now, I need to say something about these people. I believe this is Justice Akins, and this is J.H. Owusu-Acheampong, and this is Justice D.F. Annan, the Speaker of the Parliament of the day. This is Justice Akins, and this is J.H. Owusu-Acheampong. Now, the point I want to make here is a very different point, slightly different from what we're talking about. I think that historically, for legal researchers, historically, we have to notice that we have given the case of J.H. Mensah and the Attorney General too much credit. Because if you take Justice Akins out of the ruling, Justice Akins gave a far-reaching consequential ruling that if that had been the majority ruling, things would have been different. The ruling that was given by J.H. Mensah was that prior approval, as stated in Article 78 and 79, is not a term of art. And it can be anything. So if it's not a term of art, means it doesn't mean vetting. The argument before the court is that the Constitution says the minister shall become a minister with the prior approval of Parliament. Akufo-Addo argued that prior approval means prior approval of every Parliament. It's not one Parliament's prior approval goes for all Parliament. Parts of the Supreme Court agreed with that, but they said that term, prior approval, does not mean vetting. It doesn't mean you should go and do vetting. Parliament should decide what prior approval means. If prior approval means yes vote, yeah, they put Minister Paul Adomoshi standing here, nominated for the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. As many as are in favor say, we are done. You don't have to ask questions at the vetting. If Parliament decides that that's what it is, that's what it should be. That was the ruling of the court. We have to be grateful to these men. J.H. Mensah, Justice D.F. Annan, Justice Akins, and Mr. J.H. Owusu-Acheampong, who was the majority leader. They sat together and decided that whatever it is, the term prior approval must mean vetting, and therefore it will come into the parliamentary standing orders. Can you see something about all of these men? This man was NDC, Justice Annan was NDC, J.H. Mensah was MPP, but the common thing that runs through them is that they are all UP. They are all UP. So the UP tradition is what gave us the parliamentary vetting that we have today. J.H. Owusu-Acheampong, may he rest in peace. Congratulations. Justice D.F. Annan, may he rest in peace. J.H. Mensah, may he rest in peace. All of them from the UP tradition. Okay. Now we are ready to get into the mainstay. Let's start with Kennedy Agyapong's teaser. What is he saying? Let's get to Kennedy and then we set off. They said the internet challenges were over, but it looks like. Okay, we'll take a second break, which is only 4 minutes. By the time you come back, Balfour is here, I'm here, we are ready to go. Right back after the break. Okay, we are back. Sorry about that, internet challenges. All right, so I wanted to introduce the conversation by something Kennedy Agyapong said, which I showed to you in the teaser already. It's 9 minutes past 10 o'clock. I'm going to run through this very quickly. Okay, let's see Kennedy Agyapong again.
Parliament investigation, Anas, one family. Parliament, Anas, bring the investigation.
Na no cross obey.
All no say so about investigation. I didn't know Katasu. Is Parliament more than judiciary? I didn't know show judiciary, now show Parliament.
Another arm of government.
Sure. I don't know more new massa. Okoto ni budget. I will fight for justice for every person in this country. And what all I'm doing is that justice for all, not justice in the interest of the strongest. We are not in a Plato's ideal world. Why esikafo and kwana justice? No.
So let me say we're back court. I only made fireman, cashman. I be in court. I be a tantana with him. And then you can the guy will remove everything for everybody to see who are nurses. And yes, there's a court to make up. But you know, I'm interpretations are gone and need back up our hair. Only the two cover the face. Me say me the force be here didn't want him. I'm here to so a mama and nurse quan. So on shamas and that day they'll jail me. I'll beat the shit out of the guy and take that thing out.
Okay, so that's the Kennedy Agyapong. But the more you listen to him, the more a lot of things run through your mind. I mean, should investigative journalists have the power to conduct an investigation and decide, I'll show this, I won't show that? And the reason why they don't show what they don't show may be for some reason that may be untoward that we may not know. Is that correct? I mean, should a journalist set out to do work, that when the work is finished, it brings opprobrium to his nation? His nation, a journalist, set out to do the work. When the work is finished, it brings opprobrium to his nation. Is that what we are doing? That Anas does the work, and when he's finished, Ghana football has collapsed since when? 20, whatever. Ghana football is still struggling. We don't even know where we are. We now have Keto Kriku as GFA president. Everything is gone haywire because of the work Anas did. Is that, I mean, reflecting on it, is that what a journalist should be doing? Here's Kutu Achampong. He has something to say about that. Listen, Kutu Achampong, the former president who was slaughtered by J.J. Rawlings and his cohorts in 1979. This is what he said.
All of us are inside, just like people traveling on a ship. If the ship sinks, we all sink. The ship sinks, we all sink with it. This is what most of them don't understand. They think they are outside the government. The government is a separate entity somewhere. If it is destroyed, fine. We are not saying that those who contribute articles to foreign press are not patriotic. We are not saying that. At least you can earn some foreign exchange when you go on holidays, you go to a nice hotel and enjoy yourself. But what we are saying is that don't destroy your country. If you know what you are writing is wrong, don't do it, because you do your country more harm than good. And this is all the foreign press want. They don't want any developing country to come up to their standard. This you must accept. And once they can use you to destroy your own country, so much the better for them. But if any journalist continues, these people you are talking about, very soon I'll ask the Commissioner for International Affairs to read a gist of what, and the AG of what they have done. And you agree with me, some of them were given several warnings. The moment you give a warning, that warning appears on the TV, on the either BBC, or in the paper in overseas paper. So we are saying that you are free to write whatever you want to. You can criticize the government, then we will set up. But don't destroy. See, when you know what you are writing is wrong, it isn't true, and it's meant to subvert, to create disaffection, to create confusion in the country, then you are doing more harm than good. Because if the country collapses, you are within it. It doesn't collapse for me or for the colleagues. All of us are inside, just like people traveling on a ship. If the ship sinks, we all sink. The ship sinks, we all sink with it. This is what most of them don't understand. They think they are outside the government. The government is a separate entity somewhere. If it is destroyed, fine.
Very interesting for the man that they said he didn't know how to speak English and all. That's what we came to hear about Achampong. They made all sorts of jokes about him and all that. This is Achampong now talking like that. So that's Achampong speaking very well and a very poignant statement that he made. Now, this statement was done, I'm sure, before Anas was born. And he's talking about people doing things that were untrue. I mean, the people who filmed the Kwesi Nyantakyi thing, they knew that the money that Kwesi Nyantakyi was collecting was not bribe money. It was money that he was collecting to pay for the ticket that he had bought. They were aware. Anas here, he is aware that the money that was given to Mr. Nyantakyi, the football president and who was a executive member of CAF and FIFA, Anas knew that this money is not bribe money. $40,000 is not bribe money for Kwesi Nyantakyi. After all, how much does he earn at FIFA? They knew that the conversation was that this money, Mr. Nyantakyi, is for your tickets. You had bought tickets 2 times to come. He had gone with George Oponwia, bought tickets for him. He's gone there twice. He didn't meet the people. Not that he didn't meet them. Because George Oponwia was involved, they decided to do it another time. Then they said, oh, go and come. And then they were giving him the money. They asked him, how much have you spent on tickets? He said, here is the money. Anas is aware that money that was being given to Kwesi Nyantakyi, it was not bribe money. He is very aware. He's the one at some point is talking about. That's my own matter with Anas. Nothing to do with the case. I'm now going to go on to the case. So let's set it up. All right. So this is Kennedy Agyapong then gets angry with some of this information and then goes to court. Let me have Kennedy Agyapong. Okay, so let me just give this story. I'll roll over that one. Kennedy gets upset with all of these stories and then decides that he's going to investigate Anas Aremeyaw Anas. So he goes into Anas's stable and is able to get somebody out of that stable and ask him that, what do you people do? The guy is quite unhappy with somehow treatment is being meted to him with Anas because he's not making money, whatever. He thinks Anas has so much money and they who work for him don't have anything, blah, 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 blah. So he decides to talk to Kennedy Agyapong. Then he tells Kennedy, oh, these are the things we do, these are some of the things we do. Kennedy is buoyed in his anger and decides that he's going to spend his own money to show a film that the guy gave him of how Anas prepares for his documentaries. So he goes ahead to show it. He called it, Who Watches the Watchman? Upon the video being showed across the country, many people get a very different view of Anas. At that time, we took upon ourselves to investigate Anas's social media page, and we saw the significant drop in posts that Anas was making after Kennedy Japon began to show it. And we compared with other people, and they all came to the same conclusion. Anas got worried that the Kennedy Japon thing may be affecting his image. It was going international, it was going local, it was going everywhere. And people who were normal people, the unsuspecting public, were beginning to see that maybe there's some truth in what Kennedy is saying. So they began to pay little attention to Anas. Anas Arimeyao, feeling that problem, then files a writ at the High Court in defamation that Kennedy has defamed him based on the film Who Watches the Watchman. Kennedy shows up in court. You heard him saying that he won't go to court if Anas won't take off his face, blah, blah, blah. Kennedy shows up in court, and then the judge rules. And the judge makes certain statements about Kennedy, about Anas. When Anas files the writ in court, Kennedy then decides to go for the defense of justification. So if you tell me that I'm a thief, for instance, so Captain Smart says I'm a thief, or somebody says I'm a thief, and I sue in defamation, and I go to court, and the person says, oh, but I know what I'm talking about. You are a thief. And the judge said, but why are you saying that? I say, oh, let me show you, Mr. Judge. Look at this and that and that. Is he not a thief? So Kennedy did that in his justification. He showed a film to the court. Now, this is Anas. This is him. This is he talking. That is why I say that he's a blackmailer, he's a thief, he's a criminal, he has no reputation to protect, and this defamation suit from him must fail. That's Kennedy's case before the court. Okay. Now, the judge rules, and rules against Anas. And the judge makes certain comments, almost agreeing with the things Kennedy said, and we're going to go into that now. So after the judge said that, Anas is unhappy with the judgment. He believes that the judge had been prejudicial. Get me that side where Anas, the judge is being prejudicial. Okay, maybe if I roll it will come. Okay, so this one? No, okay. Anas contended that the judge displayed bias against it. Oh yeah, let's... okay. Well, let me do the Anas contended that first, and then I'll come to this one. So just bring me that one so that people can follow properly. Anas contended that. Yes, correct. It says, Mr. Anas contended that this judge displayed bias against him and unfairly criticized his investigative methods, made pronouncements without any evidence backing same from the case before him. Mr. Kennedy Japon countered, asserting that any party to a suit could petition the blah, blah, blah. Okay, so this is the main thing. Anas contended that the judge had been biased against him. Now, why did Anas say the judge had been biased? Let's see it. It's going to come now. Why did Anas say the judge had been biased? I believe, is it the next one? Okay, this is it. This is the judge speaking in the case, the trial judge. He says, quote, the president and the prime minister who the plaintiff and his team had targeted, President of Ghana and Prime Minister of Cote d'Ivoire, who the plaintiff Anas and his team had targeted, are leaders of their nations. They embody the soul and spirit of their nations. They are obliged to lead by example. So if they engage in corrupt acts, journalists like Anas, and indeed any citizen, is entitled to expose them. However, a preemptive and justified attack on their credibility, unprovoked by any credible suspicion of a specific act of corruption engaged in or about to be engaged in by them, such as drawing them into a trap so as to be caught in a contrived corruption setup, as was alleged by Kennedy Japon and backed by Exhibit KOA4, was unwarranted and devious. The learned trial judge then followed up with a statement which ended with the expression, that is not investigative journalism, it is investigative terrorism. That's what the judge said about Anas. That's what he said. Now, Anas then with his lawyers decide that the judge had been biased against them. So they file an application to the Supreme Court. What are they asking for the Supreme Court? They are asking for the Supreme Court to issue to quash. They call it certiorari. But for the lawyer will explain when he gets here. But certiorari means to issue to quash. And this went to the Supreme Court for a determination. So Anas goes to the Supreme Court that, look, this judge, he's been biased against me. But when you are sitting as a judge, you cannot be biased against people. That's for sure. You cannot be biased. The judge must rule the matter as an umpire, unbiased umpire. So Anas alleging that the judge has been biased against him is a substantial ground of allegation, isn't it? Now, the Supreme Court is now set up. So the judgment comes. 3 of the judges sided with the High Court. Okay, you didn't change it. 3 of the judges sided with the High Court's judge. And then 2 of the judges sided with Anas. So Chief Justice Gertrude Tokonu, Mr. Justice Samuel Asiedu, and Professor Henrietta Mensah Bonsu all sided with the judge that he was right in saying those things and giving the ruling. 3 of them. Here they are. The Lord Chief Justice, Justice Gertrude Saki Tokonu, and Mr. Justice Samuel Asiedu, and Professor Justice Henrietta Mensah Bonsu, all 3 of them agreed with the position that the judge was correct. Okay, so let's look at the reasons that these judges gave. The reason that even if the judge's statements were opinionated and were not legally sounding, Anas should pursue appeal instead of a certiorari. They also noted Anas's failure to object to the judge's selection during the case hearing. Okay, so let's see whether there's more. The remaining 2 judges were Justice Yoni Kulendi and Justice Amadou Tanko. Yoni Kulendi and Amadou Tanko sided with Anas. Let's get more from the... okay, so this is Justice Yoni Kulendi and this is Justice Tanko. What we are going to do is to explain to you what the majority decision was and what the minority decision was, and then we'll get into the conversation with Lawyer Bafo. All right. So they supported Anas's position for granting the certiorari to nullify the judgment, while acknowledging the Chief Justice's right to select a judge. They agreed with Anas's contention of bias and unwarranted criticism. These 2 judges agreed with Anas that there was bias and unwarranted criticism, particularly when the allegations made by the judge require a higher standard of proof to substantiate. That's where I'm coming to. However, despite their stance, the majority ruled against Anas, resulting in a 3-2. I'll get to more, but let me explain this part. Now, Justice Kulendi is saying something that is important, very, very important. Can you have me back, Kulendi and Amadou Tanko's photograph? Justice Kulendi is explaining something very important. He says that the things that the judge said about Anas, they are matters of criminality. And to come to the conclusion of matters of criminality, there has to be a criminal procedure. Okay, so in a criminal trial, the standards are higher than a civil trial. If you have to show that somebody is a thief, you have to show it 100% without doubt that he's a thief. If you show it 99%, he's not a thief. That's what it means to say beyond reasonable doubt. If you have to show that somebody has committed fraud, you have to show it 100%. If you want to show that somebody has defrauded somebody by false pretenses, you have to show it 100%. What does it mean show it 100%? 100% means that Paul Adomachi has committed fraud. He did that. Paul Adomachi says, the day you said I committed the fraud, what floor did I commit the fraud on? You were on the 4th floor. No, that day I never went to the 4th floor. I was on the 2nd floor. That's all Paul Adomachi needs to show. 1% doubt, he hasn't committed fraud. That's the standard of the criminal trial. Why is it so? It is so because when you find somebody guilty of a criminal offense, you are going to curtail his freedoms. You are going to put him in prison to curtail his freedoms. Let him live somewhat less than a human being, because the society abhors what he has done. So he has to be punished first for himself, and secondly as a deterrent for other people who are looking at it, so that nobody does that. Because of that, he is thought of as a social pariah, if you like, and so he's kept away. The Constitution gives every human being rights. So for you to take somebody's rights, the law requires you to have established it properly. Properly. That's what it means by beyond reasonable doubt. And that's what Justice Kulendi is saying. And I'm coming to say it in 3 now. So, yeah, I can say, Anas, ni Kennedy Japan asemna e bayen. Anas, a court say Kennedy didi natem. We go ni hufi. Who watches a Watchman video bi oyi no de go ni hufi. Na court na Kennedy say, na wo Anas me go hufi say, wo hu ofi dida. Wo Anas so gina wo ofi poto. Wo ye blackmailer, wo ye say. Nti hufi be na mego. Na judge ne bisa Kennedy say, na de nti na wo keke kasa ne ma ne me. Na Kennedy say, mama yi video bi nkyerɛ o, Mr. Judge. Oyi video no chere judge no share video na no say na nas pa na wuti wa adwuma wo ye nie. Debi, we dey enje. That's what the judge said. And Anas echo Supreme Court say, asema ye bua wo High Court no. Judge no sorry ya. Ono ese ogina mfimfin no. Ono judge na ese ogina mfimfin no. O sorry ya. O say me asema Kennedy kan yampa. Na asema Kennedy kiken. Eye criminal matter. Eye den na judge eti na konwam in a civil court. Otimi pronounce say me ye kronfo and say me ye blackmailer because of asema Kennedy akache no. We the judge no when ni asem ni ye. When jina mfimfin. We choose to bonkum and say nifa when jina mfimfin. Ti me ko Supreme Court. Na Supreme Court in kase asema judge ne kan enye. This is what Justice Kulendi and Justice Tanko are saying. That you cannot come to the conclusion that somebody is a thief unless through a criminal procedure. So the judge was biased and that the judge shouldn't have made those comments. Okay, that's what Kulendi is saying. Let's go to what Tokonu is saying. And then, am I still on the... We'll get it from... Get me what Justice Tokonu is saying. Let me explain that to people as well. And then, okay. So, this is Justice Tokonu. Relating to the comments that the judge made about Anas, which Justice Kulendi thinks was out of order, and Justice Amadou Tanko thinks it was out of order. Initially, when I looked at it, I agreed with Justice Kulendi and Amadou Tanko when I looked at it the first time in my little mind, because I thought that, but how can a judge say that Anas is a thief, he's a blackmailer? Where did he get it from? How? But hold on. This is Justice Tokonu speaking. He says, is the applicant, is Anas saying that a trial judge has no right to examine and analyze the evidence placed before him and draw inferences and make findings of fact? In my opinion, the statements referred to are the inferences and findings of fact which the learned trial judge dutifully made, and for that matter, they cannot reasonably be described as constituting bias and be clothed with the garb of prejudice against Anas. The statements rather constitute findings of facts by the learned trial judge. So, Justice Tokonu so asem can say, e wom say, judge no, obu asem no, okay, can asem bebre fa Anas ho. Na Justice Tokonu say, ohwem ye a, ohwa ade ni ye a, obehu say, ensem na judge ne ka fa Anas ho no. Eye ensem bi a ohwe nioma bi, ohun nioma bi, ohun krata bi, ene ma na ka sansensem no. Sansensem no kan no, emfa asem no ho potin. Asem no de back course now mu bua ene de. E ya asem foforo. Yes, asem foforo, but e bibi foforo. But ensem no keka fa Anas ho no de, wan bonitim no kan e. Ohun bibi, ohun video bi, ohun krata bi, ene ma na ka sa. Na niama na okan no, e findings of fact, say e bibi a wahu ene okan. Justice Kulendi say ensem na okafa Anas won't mean kasa because ansem no ye do gina court na ye ball kwadu a ye ball sa kwadu na ye ball kwadu na ensem a ye be bo ato so kwadu no ese say court no omo prove no trodo na 100% no ese court no prove sa na ma no trodo say criminal matter went me and prove sa na nipa no ko free enti Justice Kulendi asem say na wo court a wo gina nya criminal court e ye den na utimi hu so be a crofo e den na wo hu ye Justice Tokonu so say judge ne nsem o kan ye no wan bonitim no kan ye ohun bibi ansan o ka internet program yi so ye be kire mo adekora judge no hu ye ntia o kan sa ye be kire wo ade a judge no hu ya o kan sa asem ne ye be kire wo lo abafo ba obebubu ma kire ye so ye be kire wo de ye wo. So that is the context of the matter, isn't it? So this is what we are going to settle tonight. Justice Tokonu says the things the judge said about Anas a blackmailer, is a thief, he said this, he said that. They were findings of fact. They were findings. She says them here. The learned trial judge at page 51. Oh, okay, this is a new one. Okay. In the instant matter, the defendant, Kennedy, had alleged that the applicant, Anas, is a thief, bribe taker, and bribe receiver, a corrupt person, and all sorts of attributions of criminality. It is because of these allegations made against Anas that he sued Kennedy Japan for defamation and libel. Kennedy Japan had in his defense pleaded the defense of justification. The learned trial judge at page 51 of his judgment rightly placed the burden of proving these allegations of criminality and thus the defense of justification on the defendant. Okay, what he's saying is that the judge was right that Kennedy must prove the things he's saying. That Anas is a thief, he's a bribe taker and a bribe receiver, he's a corrupt person, and he has several criminalities. Justice Kulendi's point is that a judge cannot repeat these words. Justice Kulendi saying a judge cannot repeat these words when there's no criminal trial, when there's been no process. Justice Tokonu says that very well so, but the judge told Kennedy Japan that you have to establish these things, and Kennedy proceeded to attempt to establish it. That attempt convinced the judge that Kennedy was right. And therefore, there's no point about this. In any case, the things the judge said, they were, let's get to the Black's Law Dictionary. Let's get to the Black's Law Dictionary right now. And then let's look at it very quickly, unless there's something that I've missed that you want to remind me of. But otherwise, let's get to the Black's Law Dictionary. So in law, when you look at a judgment, okay, there are two things you're looking at in the judgment. And law students are always asked to decipher whether it's in paragraph 1 or it's in paragraph 2 or it's in paragraph 3. You can have a 73-paragraph judgment of the court. As a lawyer, a student, or a judge, you are supposed to tease out two things: obiter dictum and ratio decidendi. What's obiter dictum? Obiter dictum is a Latin term meaning the thing is said in passing. It is a judge's statement that is based on something, on some established facts, but it does not affect the judgment. A Latin term meaning said in passing, something that is said in passing. It is a judge's statement that is based on some established facts, but does not affect the judgment. So, for instance, I go to court, and I'm on a trial, whatever. And on the 8th time I'm going to court, it is the 6th time that I had met the judge at a car park at the court. And then we all climb up. So the judge comes and is writing his ruling and says, I have ruled this in favor of Mr. Adomotri. It doesn't matter that I share with him his passion for Land Rover cars, because I always see him driving a Land Rover at the car park. That passion that I share with him is irrespective of the fact that I think that he's not guilty. The Land Rover of Paul Adomotri is obiter dictum, but it is based on an established fact that I've been bringing Land Rover to the court every day. The judge must have seen my Land Rover to make the comment of the Land Rover in his judgment, but the comment of the Land Rover is obiter dictum. It is not the case. It says it is said in passing. It is a judge's statement that is based on some established facts, but does not affect the judgment. Obiter dictum. So Justice Tokonu is saying that the comments that the judge made about Anas in agreeing with Kennedy should be considered as obiter dictum. It is not what affected his ruling, his substantial ruling. And therefore, Anas' certiorari cannot lie. The judgment has been accepted by the Supreme Court. Anas must go to the Court of Appeal for an appeal which he has of rights so to do, with Kisi Ajabe, his lawyer. He has to go there. That's what is being said here. This is obiter dictum. Okay, what's the next one? The next one is this: ratio decidendi, a Latin phrase that means the reason for the decision. So when a judge writes a decision and he says, I come to this conclusion based on the following. When he says that, and you're a student, once he says, I come to this conclusion, you just take your pen and you start marking it. That's the ratio decidendi. That's what is most important. What case law looks at is ratio decidendi, not obiter dictum. No. So this is the matter. And now social media is awash. Have I left something? Have I left it? I just put it on the screen. Let me remind myself. And please get the lawyer back for in now. This is the story. This is the story. So people are on social media saying that, is that Justice Kulendi speaking? Yes, this is Justice Kulendi speaking. He said something important. Let's look as we get the case here. Justice Kulendi says here, the trial judge asserts in express terms that Anas exercises indirect political power under the cloak of journalism, engages in the execution of a scheme for grabbing power by the back door in order to satisfy himself or his insatiable taste for power, publicity, fame, awards and rewards, and also engages in blackmail of his enemies. Justice Kulendi continues. These are comments contained in the judgment of the court. Note that these comments could not have been objected to by the plaintiff, by Anas, or by his lawyer because they were not made in open court whilst hearing was going on. I agree with Justice Kulendi. There's no question about that. Because they are saying that Anas could have objected to the judge. And Justice Kulendi is saying that Anas couldn't have objected. Justice Kulendi's basic point is that you cannot make these assertions which are of a criminal nature in a civil court. Now, Justice Tokone is saying that, no, the judge did so based on established facts. What did the judge see before he said that? What did Kennedy Japan show the court to convince the judge that this is what it is? Okay, so we are going there now. Justice Balfour is, I call him Justice Balfour. Maybe one day he'll be a Supreme Court judge. Justice Balfour is taking his seat. Let's go to Dominic Ayini as a breaker while Justice Balfour settles down, and then we'll take... What does producer want us to do? Should we go to Ayini or should we take text messages? He says text messages? Okay, so let's do the text messages whilst Balfour takes his seat. So you want me to start from where? Ella. Okay, Ella, what are people saying?
So a lot of people have a lot to say about your cheese session today. It seems everybody is a big fan of it. People are even suggesting that we do Good Evening Ghana in Chi on Saturday.
Good Evening Ghana in Chi is coming on Wednesdays. Very soon. Wednesdays, Good Evening Ghana in Chi. Or should we do it Friday? Wednesday, can we make it? We get tired though. Yeah, if we say Wednesday, we'll die. Friday. Maybe Saturday. You said Saturday, yeah?
Saturday, yeah.
Yeah, Saturday is better.
Saturday.
Wednesday, we'll suffer too much.
They even give us a name, Ghana Majo.
Oh, it's Good Evening Ghana Chi. All right, go on.
All right. So Adam says, good evening, Paul. Happy Ramadan to Muslims in Ghana. We pray that Dr. Baumia will be victorious in these elections, inshallah. This one says, good evening, Paul. An airport, and this is regarding the video that he showed about the 24-hour economy. He says, an airport in every region. What is wrong with these people? Who do they think the rest of us are? What will happen? How is this going to transform the fundamentals of our very fragile economy? Now, this one is also from Manuel Dako. He says, because of Paul, I will surely pursue law after my degree. You make law too good and lovely. You can't be blockheaded when you are a student of Good Evening Ghana official. Isaac also says, I enjoy your interpretation when it comes to the law and judgment. As a socialist, beyond our political views, you are good. Lastly, Derek says, see proper delineation of matters. Take a bow, mighty Paul, Adomotri. You do all too well. Solid grasp of the Ghana history.
Yeah. So Paul is still sorted from our viewers from the legal history given earlier. Isaac Donkot says, actually, aside Paul being biased, I actually enjoy his presentation when it comes to the law and judgment. As a socialist, beyond our political beliefs, he is good. Augustine Asare Donkot says, it actually will be good for this season to chip in some 3 explanations as you did for more audience to better appreciate Good Evening Ghana. Very good initiative. People keep saying, fantastic presentation, Mighty Paul, in the likes of Paul and Andor. Lovelace Aban says, keep it up, Paul. Apostle Paul, I'm loving your 3 presentations. Kofi Owusu-Brobe says, great invention, Paul. Though not everyone here understands tree, I think the message was synced down properly in tree. Very fantastic, very educative, and professional choice of words in tree. Elvis Adjo says, Paul, I think you can actually be a lecturer as well. Do think of it. E.B. Offer says he's disappointed in Justice Yoni Kulendu for saying that Anas isn't a fraud. And lastly, Real Maxby says Anas might be evil and his partner in crime is Kisi Ejabin. By the way, Paul, kindly update your viewers regarding the LTI you sent to Kisi Ejabin about his bulletproof cars. Over to you.
All right, so we have Manuel Darko saying, your history and political lessons are top-notch, Apostle Paul. Every Tuesday and Thursday is an opportunity to learn and become wiser. From Emmanuel, Paul, you're just the best in the industry. You're always the reason why I rush to get home on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Your show is the most educative political show in Ghana. by all standards. Keep educating the youth. Last but not least, we have Mercy Ejukum saying, Paul, you are educating and informing, always speaking the truth. Over to you, Angelo.
Okay. We've got Nabon, Justin Benzema saying the likes of Captain Smart, he's big a bit mischievous. He says the likes of Captain Smart should come and learn journalism very well from Paul and his crew. They're set on their studios without any evidence, or they sit on their studios without evidence or data to back their utterances. Sorry, modern day journalists. Now, Say Mimin says, Anas promised the whole world last year that he was going to release an expose early January, which would shake the foundations of the country. We're in March, but nothing from him. Was he lying, or has he succeeded in? I'll read the rest of this because it's quite scandalous. Rosemond says, it's time the social media discuss details of court judgments to shame those who come out loud to disrespect our court systems. He says, quote, who watches the watchman? We've also got, on an unrelated matter, Kwajogad says, Cheddar brings C-Cam Kumasio. Indeed he has. Anyway, Sir Bright from Tandra Hill says, Paul, I agree with you that the Supreme Court's decision was technically right. It being that courts are primarily there to interpret laws as it is, unless it is inconsistent with the provisions of the Constitution. A judge's disapproval of a law cannot override the law as passed by Parliament of the people. Thank you. Now, we've got, Donko says, UTV has a potential employee in Paul. Your tree is top-notch. Well, maybe. Paul might be coming to a radio station near you. Lastly, Kofi Osubrebe from Barcelona says, I think this has been read. He said not everyone understands the tree, but, we can manage. So, Paul, are you ready to come back?
Yes.
Okay.
It looks like people are liking the tree, pal. Charlie, Bafotu can speak tree, so maybe we'll descend into tree and let's deal with it. Okay, yeah, but we're going to have tree sessions. It's an election year. We are going to have gun sessions as well. Okay. Justice Kulendi can be the name about Anas. Both way. Justice Kulendi no name yoji. Ke criminal, ke high court judge Jiboe. Ni akesane bo here. Ke o kwesane. Esa no domo beku. Sa no domo ting. Ni Anas judge ni bi ne we about Anas ake juloni. Anas say blackmail on me. Anas say Jebo papa ni neke. Inye we na kan because judge Jibo. Justice talk on who ke dabi. Dani judge ba we noko eje na noko dan. Ken mako noko enye we noko. E woni bi ni judge we Anas here. E na noko dani we na kan ni bi ye. Sajene we e na noko judge na noko. E wo gbekene no ba chonyeji. Mini judge na dani we na kan ni bi ye. Noji sane Kulendi ke onyo we na kan ni bi ye. To kono ke o dabi. Aga ni bi na we be fair comment na the comments ni. Je ni bi ye na we ni domo no ni fe judgment e. Judgment e le domo facts kokoro no. Ni bi ye na we le ina ni mla e ha ni judge fe on kan. Judge ba nye fe commentary. Lo about for e bi e ba chombo judges ni fe commentary all the time. Ni ha examples about Land Rover ke ni bi. E wo na kan ni bi ni Justice Tokonu we ni Justice Kulendi hu ke da abida. Keja Jiboe onyo wi ake julo jimoko bodencho la keke aba ke julo jimoko eja kelete court a fe procedure a fe na ba ke julo ni ti bo onyo tashi no ke moko e julo ni ko fe na kan no cho ake mo osumo esani no ji buy ase na acho. Anyway, well boy, let's look at the Justice Kulendi. I needed to read this before we go to Lawyer Bafo. This is one paragraph Justice Kulendi pointed out that has done quite well on social media. He says as follows, but conjectures as they are will truly remain. The comments constituted an expression of preconceptions, which smacks of feelings of bias, prejudice, and dislike towards Anas. There is no basis for the conclusion that Anas's work amounted to the exercise of indirect political power. That's Justice Kulendi. He says that there's no basis for the conclusion that Anas's work amounted to the exercise of indirect political power. There is also no basis for the courts to come to the conclusion that the specific objective of Anas's work was to grab political power and satisfy himself of his insatiable taste for power, publicity, fame, and awards. Justice Kulendi is challenging the High Court judges' talk. That there's no basis for you to say all of these things. So these are the matters. But what did the judge see before he came to the conclusion? This is one of the things he saw as I joined Bar 4 on this. This is one of the things he saw. Show the video. This is one of the things the judge saw.
Could allegations of bribery, blackmail, and selective naming and shaming being leveled against Mr. Anas Aromaya Anas and Tiger IPI be true? We at the Salis newspaper sincerely hope not. Days after assuring Mubarak and Babatunde of his ability to influence the outcome of the gold scam, Anas goes to the office of the prosecutor in charge of the case to plan how to skew the case to implicate only Hafiz so that the others will go free. This was all to force Hafiz to pay $50,000 bribe to him, Anas.
Of your phone. Hafiz quickly went back, convinced Mubarak that, what's your problem? It's $1.9 million. I've shared it to the police people. So the case won't go anywhere. So spend yours, let me spend mine. That's what Hafiz did. So his mind changed. About the issue. And he said he was first he had heard so much about me, so he said he was very shocked about the details that I had gotten at the matter. And that he was very scared about the issue. And that's his biggest worry. And he said he had been so foolish in the matter was by telling Hafiz that Hafiz should transfer his portion of the money into Egbert's account as part of his booty. Madam, the way they blew the money, girls, some Miss Malaika people, and then some Northern chiefs. He brought about 30 Northern chiefs. Now, one Northern chief, if he's coming, he has about the entourage of 25. He brought them back. So he said he organized some peace, something concert for them. Money. Peace concert. Well, organized the National Theatre. And brought all the Northern chiefs, brought all musicians. Mr. Malaika paid everybody. That's what I think they did. And then bought Tuareg. As for the girls, they had a lot. Keep them.
Anas shows the footage of his meeting with the suspects to the prosecutor. It is sad how we abuse the tools of investigative journalism to aid the obstruction of justice. What could the motivation be?
So now let me have a look at.
Okay, let me do the first one before I move on to the second. This was the video.
I hope the sound quality
very good. My cameras are professional. It was very early in the morning because that's the early time. And he was very scared. He didn't want me to come to his house because he so I asked him to leave. Yes, I will tell you. He says that when he calls all of them, nobody can deny, and that they have not been truthful to him. You know he's an ex-military guy. Yeah, he's an ex-soldier.
Really?
Yes.
Was he dismissed?
Yes. I don't know for what, but he was dismissed. His father too was a military officer. He's a barrack boy. So he can shoot. He has every skill. Yeah. Should I call my bankers here? He wanted to call his bankers there and there.
One day, like, they can even, me, if I'm calling my bankers, there's nobody who will respond and know that. Oh, God have mercy.
He won't hide. It's a fraudulent thing. Settle everybody so that it will not go anywhere.
He's really been working hard.
Where I'll be taking it out. I want the code through my account. You see, that's saves.
This was all in a move to twist the matter. He further tells the prosecutor that due to his relationship with Babatunde, he was bought with $100,000.
To him, his demeanor, 1.9 million from where? Who did they take it from? And he started telling me how the people came here, they were working with them, and how, So at that time, they buy me with $100,000 because he somehow relates to me. Somehow, I don't know. So
The two of them.
No, it was Babatunde. He now wanted to fight for himself.
The prosecutor also inquires from the Ace investigative journalist how much she is to be paid, and Anas assures her.
Told me the amount transferred to me.
$5,000.
The prosecutor tells Anas how they all want money, and the Ace journalist exclaims, "Exactly." She goes ahead to tell the journalist how it is important for them to twist the evidence he has gathered to suit his presentation.
We all want money.
Exactly.
We all need money. So that's the reason why I have to know what evidence you have, and then we tune it in to suit the presentation you have to do in court.
Anas also tells the prosecutor he paid the then Director General of the Criminal Investigations Department of the Ghana Police Service, DCOP Edupoku, on behalf of the suspects.
They have, because I went with the police. I then Edupoku was then the CIA boss. So I met him and I gave him $75,000.
It is not shocking that all the suspects have been free since 2009.
Okay, good evening to all of you watching. Ella, what are people saying? Quickly, just one message.
Parkofi says, this Anas guy is a fraudster clothed as a journalist. He's worse than most of the people he accuses.
One more.
Yes, and this is my favorite message from the night. This is from Isen. He said, it's worth noting that there's no current affairs program on our screens in the country which can be compared to Good Evening Ghana. That goes with broadcasting journalism, journalists who host these programs as well. Paul, you are truly superb. The research and presentation that goes with this program even makes it difficult for one to miss. Keep soaring higher with the Good Evening Ghana team.
Okay, and that's two messages.
Is asking, can't this Anas guy be handled by the military? Credit to Honorable Ken Ejapon and Netu for the expose. I think the whole of the Tiger IPI should be taken to the barracks and the organization should just be closed down. And then lastly, Ernest Clinton says, Anas should have left Ken alone. Now he is rather being exposed big time. He thought he's smart. He didn't know someone is smarter than him.
Okay, EBFA is saying how Anas still has his legal license to practice is a wonder. Corrupt as a Russian malware. And RD Imoro is saying now Anas is showing his face.
Right, okay, so we've got a question coming from Nanaya Afre. He says, Paul, is it true that Anas was caged at the Supreme Court in the early hours of Saturday? Interesting question. And we have a suggestion from Shadrach Mbellam. He suggests we rebrand the show's name. He says, I propose the name of the program be changed from Good Evening Ghana to Good Evening from Ghana, perhaps suggesting a more international outlook. Anyway, Paul, back to you.
All right, Lawyer Bafo is here. Lawyer, we've taken too much of your time. Thank you very much for joining us. Okay, so let's begin with the technical legal things we don't understand. What is certiorari?
Okay, so thank you very much for having me. Is a kind of power, let me break it that way for the understanding of your viewers. It's a kind of power which the Constitution vests in our Supreme Court and also the High Court. So to break it down further, anytime a person goes to court and a decision is rendered by the court, the person has one of two options, either to accept the decision and comply with any order that the court may have made, or to challenge it. If the person elects to challenge the decision of the court, he has one of four options, either to appeal against it or apply for certiorari, right? Or that is to say, to invoke the supervisory jurisdiction of the court, right? Or to appeal and also apply for certiorari at the same time. So these are your options. But the certiorari is a very, very narrow area. It's a very narrow power. Why is it narrow? Because the circumstance under which the court will exercise that power is very limited, right? Now, it's been distilled by the court to, in a nutshell, say that it will only exercise that power where on the face of the judgment there is clear evidence of an illegality or a nullity. And so, for instance, under the Constitution of Ghana, the Supreme Court of Ghana has the exclusive power to interpret our Constitution. Somebody files an application, for instance, to the High Court, inviting it to interpret a provision of the Constitution of Ghana. Now, clearly, the High Court doesn't have that power. And so when it does that, it has acted in contravention of the Constitution. An aggrieved party has the option of appealing against the decision to the Court of Appeal, right? Or apply for certiorari to the Supreme Court. So you can easily describe the power of certiorari as big brother powers, where the Supreme Court or the High Court, as it were, exercising powers, supervisory powers over the lower courts, that is the District Court and the Circuit Court, and the Supreme Court over the High Court, the Court of Appeal and the High Court. Is simply saying that you are out of line by exercising this power. And so therefore, let that decision that you made be brought to the Supreme Court and let it be quashed. That is certiorari. Now, when I say it is a very narrow compass, I've already stated that the Supreme Court simply looks at the face of the judgment or the decision, as it were, and say that it is illegal, right, by reason of the fact that you exercise the power which you ought not to have exercised. That is what we say lack of jurisdiction. Or, yes, you may have had jurisdiction in making the decision, but you made an order which you didn't have the power to make, right? And so it's been quashed. Or a person, you made a decision or you made an order against the person without giving the person a hearing. And so therefore, we have quashed the decision. And so it's very narrow, as opposed to an appeal where after the judgment, all the records, when I say records, I'm referring to the testimony of the parties, the pleadings, that is the statement of claim, the statement of defense, which form the basis of their case, and also the exhibits that were tendered at the trial. They are put together. And if there is an appeal, right, the appeal is added to it and transmitted to the appellate court, right? And so the appellate court then have the benefit, it then have the benefit of all these documents. So it assesses the documents and say that when I look at the reasoning for the decision, it finds basis in this evidence, right? Or it doesn't find basis, and so therefore we are setting it aside. Or the judge misdirected itself, right, on a matter of a particular legal principle or on a matter of a particular fact, and so therefore we are setting it aside. That is why we say an appeal is by way of rehearing, that the Court of Appeal or the appellate court may not have the benefit of listening or hearing the testimonies, but it has them on record. And so it will examine the record.
You are saying that the certiorari is not like that?
The certiorari is not like
that. It doesn't see everything that has happened?
No.
Why?
Doesn't. Because it's a narrow compass. It is purely law, right? When you look at the face of the judgment, it should be evident on it. Right.
That he either didn't have the power,
exactly.
He acted ultra vires,
exactly.
He lacked jurisdiction.
Exactly.
One of those technical barriers.
That's right.
Okay.
And so, there's an error apparent on the face of the record.
But Justice Kulendi is saying the judge is being biased. That's why he's agreeing with the certiorari.
So when you look at this particular case, Justice Kulendi and Justice Tokonu say something which, very respectfully, should invite our attention. It is to the effect that they were being invited to do something novel, which is that the commonplace, or what we have come to know with certiorari applications, even with the audi auterem principle, which is that I wasn't heard, right? This time, a judgment of a court was being asked to be quashed on the basis of mere language of the judge.
Well, but bias is a serious matter.
Yes, but question is, on certiorari, we don't have the benefit of the record to see whether or not what the judge said, right, is in the record. Don't forget, a judge has the right to make comments. It is in judgment and decisions that the judges also express themselves. We are here talking. They can talk. They can never, when criticized, respond to it. In issues of public opinion, matters of current affairs, economic issues, they can never express themselves.
So the opportunity of their judgment is to talk about those things.
The opportunity they get is to write, which is why the law gives them the right to take judicial notice.
And run commentary.
Right.
But how do you say that is not part of the judgment? I'm coming to the Tokonu side. How do they say that everything the judge said was not part of the judgment?
So I was watching you during the touch screen. You distinguish between the reason behind the judgment and things that are just said by the way.
But Tokonu said they are established facts.
Yes, so those are comments he makes or passes on the facts that he has evaluated. Don't forget.
But if you evaluate facts as a judge, can you say somebody is blackmailer?
So,
I, the litigant, should be able to say that. So, I can say, Anas, you're a blackmailer. Can a judge also say that?
So, the judgment was evaluated at the Supreme Court.
Yeah.
Right? When you look at the evaluation of the judgment by Justice Tokonu, how she evaluated it, Justice Kulendi didn't do that, with the greatest of respect to him. He's somebody I really admire and respect. When we came to the bar, he was one of the...
He was the standard.
He was the standard.
He still is the standard.
Yes, he was one of the reasons why we will stay in court till late before we go.
You want to listen to him?
Yeah. When I came to the bar, let me say this. My senior Nana Bidietu told me that make sure, he gave me a list of lawyers and said, when you come to court and you see them, make sure you sit in and listen to them. He told me, and Justice Kulendi was one of them. And so, very respectfully, but I disagree with him on this occasion, and I will explain to you why. You see, when you look at the decision, the opinion of Justice Tokonu, at, is it paragraph 17 or so, she states that the plaintiff, which is Anas himself, in his pleadings, has stated that the many expressions of Kennedy Agyapong was understood by right-thinking members of society in a certain regard, and it had been distilled into 34 different expressions. One, he himself, Anas, has stated that from all that Kennedy Agyapong has stated, it was understood by right-thinking members to mean that he is a blackmailer. He himself said it. It's understood by right-thinking.
Yeah, but that's the basis for his defamation suit.
Exactly. Exactly. Because with defamation suits, you are required by law to state how right-thinking members of society understood it in the body of your case. And so he had done that. Now, Kennedy Agyapong didn't dispute that. Kennedy Agyapong said, yes, I said it. And the meaning to it, I agree. I, however, say that I am justified in saying that. At that point, there was no duty on the judge to determine whether or not Kennedy Agyapong has said it. There was also no duty on the judge to determine how right-thinking members of society understood it. The duty on the judge was, however, to determine whether on the basis of the evidence tendered by Honorable Kennedy Agyapong, right, indeed, Anas was understood, was a blackmailer, was a criminal, had evaded tax, was a murderer, right, was corrupt, right? So Anas submitted those words to the court, right? And on the basis, as I said, of Kennedy Agyapong's admission, the court was duty bound. Now, what wrong does a judge commit for evaluating your complaint, you yourself, your complaint, the things you have said, that is the basis for which you had come to court. The judge evaluates it.
And determines that the complaints are correct.
And complaints are correct.
On the basis of a video?
On the basis of what you, first and foremost, your allegations. And secondly, what evidence Kennedy Agyapong had tendered.
Who tendered the evidence? Kennedy?
Kennedy.
The video?
Yes.
So the judge watched the video in the court?
That's from the judgment. That's the understanding we get.
And he comes to the conclusion that, oh yes, it's true, you're a blackmailer.
When you look at the judge's decision, right, the 64-page judgment, he even transcribed, for instance, Exhibit KA02.
Can you read it for us?
Let me read it for you.
What did he say? And who is talking in Exhibit KA02?
It's a conversation between Anas and the prosecutor at the Attorney General's office.
Who was the prosecutor prosecuting? The people Anas had found of collecting bribe and all that?
No, the people Anas had found to be involved in a gold scam.
Gold scam, yeah.
In a gold scam.
Okay.
Now, this is it.
Who is talking?
This is the prosecutor talking. They have really been working and are settling everybody. This is Anas. His demeanor, $1.9 million from where? Who did they take it from? Then he started telling me how the people came here and were working with them. So at that time, they brought me with 100,000. This is it. So at that time, they brought me with 100. They bought me. Yes. He says at that time they bought me with $100,000 because he's somehow related to me. At that time, they bought me. This is Anas.
Who is Anas talking to?
The prosecutor, prosecuting the gold scammers.
And he's asking the prosecutor to exclude one of the gold scammers.
So that is what ensues here. And he is telling the prosecutor that he was bought me with $100,000 from the judgment. Now, because he is somehow related to me, somehow I don't know how. prosecutor, is it the truth? No, Babatunde. He now wanted to fight me. If plaintiff says, this is the judge, if the High Court judge, if plaintiff says
plaintiff being Anas,
that Babatunde, in fighting for himself, bribed him with $100,000, who else can he say he didn't?
So this is an admission, Anas's admission that he had been paid $100,000 to exclude evidence of somebody. So the person
exclude somebody from prosecution.
Okay, Anas is the complainant.
Anas is
to the prosecution.
To the prosecution.
And he's telling the prosecutor that don't prosecute this guy.
Exactly.
Because he has given me $100,000.
That's right.
And I took it because he said that he's my relation. Exactly. I don't even know how I'm related. Oh, okay. Okay.
Right. And then he goes on, who else can say he didn't? True to the scheme, Babatunde, who had confessed to a crime involving $1.9 million on a tape in the possession of the plaintiff, that is Anas, was excluded from the charges. The video of his confession was never shown to the public. So, Anas says that from Kennedy Apon's expressions and comments in the public domain, the public has understood Kennedy Apon to mean that he's a criminal, right? And Kennedy Apon is saying you are a criminal. Now here is Kennedy Apon has tendered evidence where you say that you were bought, right?
With $100,000.
With $100,000.
That's almost conclusive. So why is nobody prosecuting Anas on these matters?
Well, you can talk to my big brother, Dami. So this is it. And so when a judge...
Why is Kennedy Apon not making a complaint to the Attorney General for the prosecution of Anas?
That's a choice Kennedy Apon has to make. But this is it. And so when a judge has said that, you came to court to say that Kennedy Apon should be understood to mean that you were a criminal. And he has indeed tendered evidence where you say you were bought, right, with $100,000. Paul, when you are bought, what does it mean?
But why did the prosecutor not proceed to prosecute the guy?
That is what the judge is saying, that it is because of Anas's confession that he was bought.
But why does the prosecutor have to listen to that?
Well, that's what we need to interrogate. But this is the evidence. And let's not forget the prosecutor is not the one at the involved in the trial. He's not the subject of the trial. It's Anas.
Yes, Anas, I agree. Yeah.
And so this is it.
So based on this, the judge concluded, or based on this and others, concluded that indeed Kennedy is right. He's justified.
Yes.
So what ruling did he give to the defamation? Did he dismiss it?
He dismissed it.
Oh, so he dismissed the defamation suit.
That's right.
And Anas can appeal against it.
That's right.
But instead of doing so, he said the words that the judge used were biased.
Exactly.
And so that the ruling should be quashed.
Exactly.
So that he can start the trial again somewhere else.
Exactly.
Okay.
But
okay.
Paul, so when people say that the judge tried Anas criminally, clearly, very respectfully, I disagree.
That's what I thought too when I read Justice Kuleni.
And very respectfully, I think that it is without a clear advertence of these facts.
Complicated. Did Justice Tokonu, Justice Asiedu, and Justice Henrietta Mensah Bonsu, were they aware of this?
This is what Justice Tokonu made reference to. And
it is in the judgment.
It is in the judgment.
Oh, the judge made reference to it. So Tokonu is relying on what the judge said.
Exactly.
That the judge said he had seen this.
That's right.
The judge transcribed the video.
So
now, I get it now.
So now,
I get it.
When this came to the Supreme Court, the Supreme Court had to evaluate the judge's comments to determine whether or not indeed it was without basis. Justice Tokonu and Justice Asiedu now looked at the judgment and said everything the judge has said, right, was on the basis of evidence that the judge had alluded to in his judgment, right, and the case before him. And so, very respectfully, it was not prejudicial. It wasn't as though...
Justice Kulendi see these things as well? Did he see it?
Of course, he should see it. He has the benefit of the judgment, right? And so, perhaps... I mean, he's far more experienced. He can see things that probably I cannot see. But from where I sit, very respectfully, this is what it is. and the Supreme Court judges made reference to it. Justice Asiedu, I mean, you've talked about the judge.
I mean, I've seen people on social media, especially Kisa Jabe's guy, what's his name? Sami Dako, quoting Justice Kulendi and extolling Anas's virtues. I've seen all that.
Well,
didn't they see this?
Well, maybe. Sometimes you choose to see what you want to see. Sometimes, Paul, you very respectfully were a journalist. You know that some news are blocked.
Yes.
And some news are put out there.
Yeah.
It depends on where your interest lies.
Oh, but you can't have a legal commentary on a legal something or a legal opinion that indicates only one side. That's what we try to do tonight, to show what Tokonu said and show what Kulendi said.
Now, Paul, let me read this to you too.
Yeah.
This is Justice Asiedu's judgment at page 18 of the judgment. This is what he says. Again, at page 62 of his judgment, the learned trial judge found and held that the case of Hafiz and Babatunde confirms the claim of the defendant that the plaintiff is a blackmailer.
The claim of Kennedy that Anas is a blackmailer.
Yes.
What is the evidence of Babatunde?
So the evidence of Babatunde is that he gave money to Anas
For
so
what?
that he will not be prosecuted.
How much?
$50,000.
Babatunde is different from the 100.
Babatunde is different from the 100. So let me read
So
it.
already 150. That's not bad.
Yes. On this point, Hafiz said on television that plaintiff failed to show the video on them because he paid him $50,000. Plaintiff is Anas. The evidence from plaintiff's own mouth is that Babatunde bought him with $100,000. Lo and behold, the tapes on the suspects were never shown to the public by the plaintiff. I considered it established that the plaintiff blackmails people he desires to destroy. There's a basis. You see?
Oh, I get it. He didn't just come to the blackmail conclusion. Yeah, I get it. I get it.
It was Anas's case. Kennedy says I was justified in calling you a blackmailer. Kennedy tendered evidence. The judge, as required of him in evaluating the evidence, came to the conclusion that on the basis of the evidence Kennedy tendered, you were a blackmailer.
That's quite straightforward.
Yes.
But is Kulendi's point not that whilst blackmail is a criminal offense, for a jurist, if you like, to come to the conclusion that anyone is a blackmailer, he must have taken the person through the process. Just the person's mere confession does not necessarily make him, because even in criminal trial, confession can be withdrawn.
Paul, was it a criminal trial? It was a defamation.
It wasn't a criminal trial, but the fact that he has said, I'm a blackmailer, should not make a jurist, a judge of that, for that matter, say that, yes, you're a blackmailer.
Paul,
until a criminal court has said he's a blackmailer.
Blackmail is defined by the Black's Laws Dictionary.
It is. But only a high court can come to the conclusion that X is a blackmailer.
I don't think so. Paul, this is a defamation suit. I've called you a criminal. Not every criminal is prosecuted or convicted.
It's the Attorney General's decision.
The Attorney General's discretion.
Yeah.
But it doesn't stop me, whether or not you have been convicted, to say Paul is a murderer.
If you have the evidence.
If I have the evidence. If I saw that Paul was the one that killed Kofi Baboni, and I say, Paul, you were a murderer because you killed Kofi Baboni, the Attorney General may choose not to prosecute you. It is his discretion. And articulate it.
But you can say that to Paul if you are not a judge sitting over a case in which Paul is involved.
When I go to court, I should be able to establish to the court that Paul indeed is a murderer.
Yes, but that your establishment to the court doesn't end there. The court must agree with you and take Paul through a criminal procedure process to come to the conclusion that indeed he's a murderer.
So
until then,
what,
he's not a murderer.
Wait. What is the criminal procedure?
The ones that is in the criminal procedure code.
Wait. Paul,
Act, what, 61?
No, Act 20, Act 29.
29, 30 and 29. Yeah.
Paul,
yeah. 30 or 29?
30 and 29.
30 and 29, okay.
Yes. Paul, wait. I come to court. First and foremost, I don't have the power to prosecute you.
Yes.
The power lies with the Attorney General.
And this is a civil trial.
And this is a civil trial. I've called you a murderer. I come to court, produce video evidence of Paul killing.
Fair enough. But that the judge, the High Court judge, ought not to be able to join the bandwagon.
Nothing stops the judge from coming to the conclusion that you are a murderer when he has seen a video of you killing.
So he should say that the video showed in court appears that plaintiff is actually a murderer.
Wait.
But that conclusion can be gotten by the another high court, criminal division, blah, blah, blah. That's nicer.
Wait, that is nicer.
Yeah.
Question, however, is that even if the judge's comment is wrong, on his face, does it amount to bias? It only shows that he probably did not evaluate the evidence well. And so certiorari, it's not your remedy. Your remedy is in appeal.
No, Kulende's issue is bias. Why do you think there's no bias?
You see, they wanted the court to just look at the language and come to the conclusion that he was biased.
Yes, but language, bias is always in language.
Bias may not necessarily be in language.
Often it is in language.
It may be in language, it may be in conduct, it may be in many ways. For instance, when you look at the language used by, when you look at the authorities used by Justice Kulende, you will discover that in most cases, those that he's made reference to were not in a judgment.
But I also remember, I remember Justice Doche, the Woyome trial.
Yeah.
He said what they are doing is to create loot and share.
Yeah.
That Woyome was conniving with government officials. And a lot of people took that very badly. But
the African Court of Human Rights said that it was no evidence of impartiality against Woyome.
Oh, Woyome sued, didn't he?
Woyome sued.
At the African Human on that matter.
On that matter.
That Doche was biased. He lost.
He lost. The African Court of Human Rights said it was no evidence of impartiality. Paul, what it is that a judge is free to make comments. Without more, it can never be biased in his judgment.
Come to think of it, maybe Doche's own was worse because he didn't see any video.
He didn't see any
He
video.
just put the matter together and said that this is create, loot, and share.
Exactly.
This judge saw video.
He saw video. He saw a video.
But don't you think that judges must be given a certain kind of language that they should use and language that they cannot use?
Well, there is always a guideline, right, in terms of our judgments as to what language judges can use and languages they may not use. But be that as it may, it will never amount to bias. Paul, look, if you read the judgment, Justice Asiedu, for instance, makes reference to cases where a judge referred to somebody as a rogue.
Oh, wow.
As a rogue. Right? And that wasn't a basis for somebody to allege bias. Right? As I was saying, the supervisory jurisdiction of the court is a very narrow compass. So you cannot just go there and say that because of language, a whole judgment should be set aside. A whole judgment. After trial, right? And parties having been heard. And then you say that just because of language, without more, right? First and foremost, as we both agree, judges are free to express themselves.
Yes, they are.
And so that is no basis for bias. So you should do more.
Okay, let's get to the text messages. Get ready, ladies. I have one to read. It says, this is from PMC. It says, what? You speak Gantu? Where did you learn this tree? Okay, but she says something more important. It says, Paul, those of us who studied literature have a right to call you a terrorist without being a criminal terrorist. It's language, and a judge is permitted to use it. Someone can be a terrorist, both merely on the face of the record, and in fact, I'm not surprised Mensa Bonsu agreed. She's a student of Shakespeare. Okay. What do you have? Ella.
All right, so this is from Nathan. He says, it is glaring that Paul's position on matters of law and governance is impeccable. He wields a cloak of law and governance as it were his birthright. Paul, you have given me more reason to learn and learn. Your presentation this evening is one of a kind, very educative and unmatched. Daniel says, wow, Paul, you are changing the frontiers of journalism in this country. The diversity is powerful. And Augustine says, hey, the multilingual Apostle Paul, you do all. Answer it.
So, I like this noble gentleman called Lawyer Bafo. His submissions show his high level of maturity. They wrote Bafo. Okay, Bafo.
Lawyer Bafo, yes.
Okay. Lawyer Bafo, his submissions show his high level of maturity. Wow, just see how he breaks down things to our understanding. Certainly, Paul, kindly link him for a judge position. Ofei Evie says, how could the learned Justice Kulendi and Tanko dissent when the evidence confirms Anas to be a blackmailer and a fraud? He continues to say, interesting discussions. This is the reason I may pursue a law program in the future. Lawyers are incredible. Others are just noisemakers, and I know they know themselves. Now, lastly, Kingsley Hinaku says an investigative journalist who resorts to extortion and blackmailing lacks the principles necessary for learning, especially within a country that upholds the rule of law.
All right, so is saying, where's the lady prosecutor right now? I feel she equally must be persecuted. We also have Ibi Ofe saying, Paul, please stop playing the devil's advocate. Anas is cruel and a diabolic creature. He practices investigative journalism, and the High Court judge was spot on. Please stop, or I will take you off my Christmas card list. Sorry.
Okay, Bashir Rahaj says Captain Salt will also start speaking in different languages. Again, Bernard Ademen, who says someone should tag the captain to watch the program. Now we've got one I'll run through momentarily. Kweku Poku says, now because of Good Evening Ghana, my understanding of social issues, political issues, governance issues, and legal matters has increased. Ghana is a country with its own values, morals, and legal laws which govern the daily affairs of our living and existence. Rights are obtained from laws, and laws are formed to guide, direct, straighten, stir the affairs of a country and a society. They are also made for men and not the other way around. Those that are going to the Supreme Court to seek for interpretation should be allowed to experience and exercise their rights too. But they shouldn't also forget that all the three arms of the government stand individually. Parliament is for the MP to formulate law for the country. So it means that they still have the power to make laws to make changes in the bill or laws. Paul, please situate the agreement such that we will get the distinctions and the actuals. Tell us between which period of time does the president have to assent to the bill? Which constitutional provisions give Parliament the powers to even vote on the bill if the president refuses to sign? Also, I've said...
We'll do that on Thursday. Thursday, that's our big program. Yeah,
sure. Okay, and lastly, Emmanuel Obama says, good evening, Paul. In fact, you are good in all fields, even with Akan and Ga. Congratulations. Well, I'm glad you like that. Anyway, back to you.
Okay, Owusu Bempa from Ghana Gas sent me a press release that I have to read, and later on I'm sure to be on our social media page. It's not a very good news though. It's 19th March 2024. Ghana Gas statement on Air Force emergency landing at Bonsukrum. Okay, it says, the Ghana Air Force emergency response was activated earlier today during a routine inspection of our onshore and offshore gas pipeline right of way. On board were 14 Ghana Gas personnel, 6 Air Force crew members, and 1 other service provider. The emergency landing occurred as a result of bad weather conditions. All passengers on board have been accounted for, and there were no fatalities. However, crew members are currently undergoing routine medical checkup, while assuring members of the public and our operational staff at Atuabo to remain calm. We want to assure the general public that the incident will not affect our operations. And that's signed by Ernesto Subempa, the Ghana Gas Chief Executive Officer. You were saying something about OJ.
After the criminal trial, there was a civil suit.
Yeah.
Right? And, you know, even though the prosecution did not succeed in the criminal trial, they got some compensation in the civil trial.
Yeah.
Both have different standards. Nothing stops a judge, right, to look at a matter, even in a civil suit, and say that this is criminal. Nothing. Especially when the issue of whether or not a certain conduct was criminal was at bar.
So one last thing. It's 11:30, but one last thing. Still on the language question. If anyone says, because of the role that judges hold in society, if Captain Smart says that I'm a thief, I can go to bed. Nobody takes it serious. But if Justice Henrietta Mensah Bonsu says, whilst presiding, that you're a thief, that's major. So they shouldn't say that.
So, Paul, for civil matters, there can always be criminal causes in there.
Yes.
For instance, there can be an allegation of fraud against you. And when it comes up, the standard is of criminal standards.
But it's a civil trial.
But it's a civil trial.
Yes, they have to prove it well.
That's right.
Correct.
When you look at the judgment of the High Court, and indeed the Supreme Court made reference to it, at paragraph 23 of the judgment, the judge stated that this is a matter which, even though is civil, the allegation made that he is a criminal, he's a blackmailer, he's corrupt, and so on and so forth, he's a thief, right, is of criminal in nature. And therefore, the standard and the burden of proof was one that is required in criminal matters. And so the judge never lost sight or never lost the fact that in matters of this nature, even though it was a civil matter, the standard was of criminal in nature. That is beyond reasonable doubt. And also the fact that the burden was on Kennedy Agyapong. Right?
I see, but he's repeating the words. That's Justice Kulendi's problem.
Because he indeed, on the basis of the criminal standard of proof and burden of proof, right, found that he's a criminal.
On the basis of a video.
Yes, on the
video.
Yes.
No cross-examination, no re-examination, no counterclaims.
So take it easy, please. Take it easy.
Yeah.
First and foremost, when you go for trial, you tender evidence, and Anas had the opportunity to object to it.
The evidence.
The evidence.
Yeah.
Right? Nothing shows he objected.
He wouldn't have succeeded in objecting.
Well, you don't say that.
Well, we don't know, but it would have been very difficult.
Because we don't have...
sued him for defamation. He says, I have justification. There's a video, and you say, I don't want to play the video.
No, but you see, we don't have the benefit of the record. What we know is that a video evidence went in.
Yes, it did.
Good. Now that video evidence, the judge, per the video evidence, is saying that I found that the allegation made against you, which you say should be understood to mean you are a criminal, is justified. Indeed, you are a criminal. Because in this...
he can end there, justified. He shouldn't say, indeed, you are a criminal.
Paul, wait. If it is justified that you are a criminal, somebody has said you are a criminal. If it is justified, what does it mean?
But you don't have to say you are a criminal.
No. Nothing stops the judge. Nothing. It's a finding of fact.
The lady is surprised by your... surprised.
Nothing stops the judge. Nothing, Paul. Nothing.
I think there's a conversation that you guys at the bar will continue to have. Maybe the next bar conference, there should be a topic for Justice Kulendi to lecture words to be used by judges. Maybe you should put that at the bar. The bar president is Yabuafo. Maybe I should tell him to put something in the bar conference.
The fact of the matter is that if you think that the judge is wrong, your right or recourse is not certiorari. That is what the majority is saying. The majority is not saying that, right? The judge...
that sounds like a trap.
No, it's not.
It sounds like that. It may not
we
be.
have all done it.
It may not be. And they are sending Anas to the Court of Appeal, knowing that he will be slaughtered further.
No, Paul.
That's what Anas's people will think.
Let me tell you something.
That instead of you to quash the judgment based on the language the judge has used, you people are telling me I should go to Court of Appeal. Then 3 judges will sit down and cut off my head. I won't do it.
When they do, you have a further right to appeal to the Supreme Court. Paul, we have gone to, we've gone to the Supreme Court, for instance, for certiorari, to challenge an order of a judge that he didn't have jurisdiction to make that order in a judgment. The Supreme Court said no, he has jurisdiction. However, we find that his findings were contrary to the orders he made. And so therefore we are staying execution. Go to the Court of Appeal.
And appeal against it.
Let the Court of Appeal determine it. Whether or not, to determine the propriety of the order.
Oh, that's interesting. But they stayed.
They stayed, yes.
The order.
Yes.
Allowing you to go to
the... They have the power under the Constitution.
So Anas could have gone to the Supreme Court for a stay of the order.
No, he didn't have to. But I'm saying that even if the Supreme Court was minded, in fact, there was no order in this judgment, but if there was an order, the Supreme Court can say that. Okay. All I'm saying is that.
So, Bafo, under what circumstance, this is bringing my mind quickly to Salah and Attorney General, under what circumstance can you successfully accuse a judge of bias? Because we saw that, I said, Salah and Attorney General, all what we saw that when you read it, it looks like bias. The court said it's not bias against Apalu.
You need to distinguish Salah and Attorney General from this. Salah and Attorney General, it had to do with the relationship between...
I'm not even comparing. I'm saying that looking at Salah and looking at this, under what circumstance can one accuse a judge of bias? Okay. Successfully.
Salah is in a case of his own. Salah belongs to a litany of authorities where the Supreme Court is protective of itself. Look at Salah. Look at the case of Anas. What's his name?
Let me just tell viewers that quickly in Salah, the matter was that one of the judges who sat against whom an appeal had been made for bias, Apalu, Justice Apalu, our beloved Justice. We love Apalu because Akufo-Addo loves him. That's all. There's no other reason. We didn't meet him. But Akufo-Addo so talks about Apalu so many times that you would love Apalu. So Justice Apalu was accused of having met the guy at Golden Tulip to have a drink. One of the opponents.
Was it that?
Was it a drink?
Apalu is said to have been a friend of Salah.
No, but they were seen together in Golden Tulip.
Beyond Golden Tulip, he used to work at one of these
government places.
Old. Is it GNTC or?
Yeah, GNTC it was. That's where Salah was.
It was GNTC.
Yeah.
He used to
the
work
Ghana
there.
National Trading Company.
That's right. Apalu. There was evidence that sometimes, right, shopping was done for Apalu. There. With the involvement of Salah.
That Salah being the boss would do Apalu's grocery and send it to him.
That's right.
Okay.
Victor also deposed to an affidavit and said that yes, I play golf with Apalu. Right? What the allegation that is being made against him is true. They have a relationship. Then the Supreme Court says that yes, they may have a relationship, but it depends on the degree of relationship. That is why I am saying that it belongs to a category of cases.
I get that, but my question is unanswered, lawyer. Under what circumstance can you successfully accuse a judge of bias? If a judge says you're a thief, you're a blackmailer, you're a this because I've seen a video, and you can't accuse him of bias, when can you accuse him of bias?
In the course of hearing. For instance, the conduct of the judge in the course of hearing. When you look at the authorities Justice Kulendi referred to, it's an example of such authorities. For instance...
So if I go to court and I'm involved in a case and a judge is talking and he says that your Good Evening Ghana, I never watch it.
Exactly.
Is that bias?
No. That your Good Evening Ghana, I never watch it.
Yes.
I don't even like certain things you say.
Yes. Is it bias?
Right? And you look at it, you look at her demeanor or his demeanor and you think that this woman does not like me. You build a case of bias. You may succeed.
But if I go to the Supreme Court, they didn't see the woman's demeanor. They just heard what she said.
Yes.
That's your Good Evening Ghana. I don't like it. I don't watch it. I think they should stop it.
And especially when the case involves Good Evening Ghana.
Oh, I get it. If a case involves Good Evening Ghana, that's a clear bias.
That's a clear bias.
If it doesn't involve Good Evening Ghana and somebody has knocked my friend with a car and I'm a witness to the matter, it's a different matter.
That's right. That's right.
But it looks like it's a very gray area. And I think Justice Kulendi and Justice Tanko are trying to establish something. Should we not support them to do so?
A judgment of a court which has been regularly obtained, unless there is no other option of challenging it, no court will grant you certiorari.
Oh, I get that. That's technical. Go for appeal.
Go for appeal.
And let the court of appeal look at all that.
Assess the evidence on record.
And make the determination this was bias.
And make the determination that this was bias. But just looking at the language of the judgment, right, without more, without the benefit of the evidence to determine whether the assessment by the judge, the evaluation was founded on the evidence, it is a Herculean task.
So if tomorrow you went to court, Supreme Court, and you started your argument, and then the clerk of the court told you that, lawyer, Justice Kulendi would like to see you after. He's not sitting here. And then you go to Justice Kulendi and say, hey, Bafo, I was watching you on Good Evening Ghana. What were you saying? What are you going to tell him?
You know, Justice Kulendi is a big brother to everybody.
Yes.
We'll have a good discussion. And we've met on flights. We'll have a good discussion.
What about Justice Toko who calls you and says, come and see me? And says, Bafo, that I watched you on the show. That was really good.
That wouldn't mean that she's going to be biased towards me.
I have to leave it here. We've done 20 minutes at the top of the hour midnight. There's not much to say. Not a lot. Antoine, it looks like I want to read a text message. Okay, so let's do one each and then we call it a day.
Yeah. I think I'm starting. Okay, so the last message for the day is, this one is coming from Nana Kwejo. He says, Paul, the lawyer has really dealt with the issues very well. One thing that most lawyers find difficult to distinguish between the certiorari and appeal. So most of such application for certiorari at the Supreme Court are mostly thrown out.
Yes. Do you know that until recently, certiorari applications never lasted more than 5 minutes at the Supreme Court?
5 minutes?
Yeah, it didn't last.
5 minutes?
Yes, never. So, in terms of the advocacy of the lawyers, until recently, you can find out.
Why? Because that's easy to determine. And that's why I said it's narrow.
It's very narrow. When you go and meet somebody like Justice Badigbe and Co.
Pega,
they will say that, look, we have read your application. What else do you have to add? You have read it.
You are wasting their time.
Yeah. I mean, it should be on the face of the judgment.
Very obvious.
Or the ruling. Obvious. Unless
that a circuit court was making determination of constitutional matters.
Exactly.
Straightforward.
That a judgment or a ruling was given without recourse
to the Supreme Court.
No, you were not heard.
You are not heard. Or the authority.
Or the authority. Not to look at a judgment and say that the language means the judge is biased. You know, because when it goes on appeal, the appellate court has the benefit
to deal with all of that. They don't want to take the work of the appeal.
No. And you see, when you read the judgment, it says that they didn't want to raise the floodgates because an appeal is by way of rehearing. So Justice Eric Barr may have taken a certain position. On appeal, Justice Eric Barr's decision will be evaluated against the evidence. And then the court might say he was harsh. However, we still find that the justification was established.
So that the appeal will look at the evidence the judge had and what the judge said.
Exactly.
And will connect the evidence before him to what he said.
Exactly.
And make a determination whether, given this evidence, he should have said this.
He should have said this.
Okay.
And so, therefore, they are affirming the decision in part.
Or they are changing it.
So, but at the Supreme Court, it would have meant that the whole decision is quashed as if no hearing was done.
Yeah. The record is lost.
And so we have to come down again and rehear
and start afresh.
When there is the option of an appeal, certiorari is discretionary, and all these things are taken into account.
I get it. Yes.
So Brian has he says this goes to the lawyer in the studio. Can an investigative journalist act in a manner of corruption in order to draw the truth to light? If yes, then the fact that a journalist pretends to be corrupt, accept bribes and what have you, does not mean he is corrupt in practicalities and even in real life. You know what they say, to catch a thief, you need to think like a thief. Now, Ofei Ebi has a submission. He says, Paul, in the course of hearing, a judge can be accused of bias under actual and apparent bias. Actual when he has an interest, and apparent when his action creates a reasonable suspicion.
All right. Joe Waladi says, Apostle, the good people of Ghana accord you the highest respect for such an educative program tonight. Indeed, over 1,000 people never regret not sleeping, I beg your pardon. But for your guest tonight, Lawyer Balfour, he is such an intelligent lawyer, and I will not be surprised to see him on a higher stage. That's it.
Okay. Justin Benzema says, I really enjoyed the submission of Lawyer Nana Ajman Balfour. He deals with the law and evidence without emotions. And lastly, Augustine Asari Donko says, Apostle Paul's difficulty is how to disagree with Justice Kulendi. He's a very loyal Kulendi advocate. Paul,
that's kind of true. I have to concede to that. I think that's true. Kulendi is one of my favorite people.
Paul, you tend to be a very loyal person.
I love him dearly.
You are loyal to those you are very loyal to.
Well, don't say more. Don't say more. Okay, viewers, thanks for watching. Bye-bye. See you.